All right, we got a 2012 Dodge Durango. We're going to be replacing the oil cooler on here. Now, to be able to diagnose this, of course, if you just have some oil drips, you don't really know where that's coming from, so you want to kind of figure out that it is the oil cooler. And one good way of doing that is if you don't really have any oil leaks going on, you can't really see anything, but then you go to drive the vehicle and you notice a lot of oil is coming out, that is a very good indicator that you've got an oil cooler issue. You're going to have a panel covering this under the passenger seat. Got a 10 millimeter. All right, we're over here by the throttle housing. This band's an 8 millimeter. You could also use a flat. Now you don't have to take this out, but I'm getting it out of the way. It may get in the way when I'm filming here. I'm going to get this loose from this little evaporative purge canister. It's got a blue lock. Just push right there. Take a 10 millimeter. May have a bracket missing. I just have one. Thinking there's supposed to be another one back here, but I'm not 100% sure. These are going to be 8 millimeters. Okay, so just to recap, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then the tricky one's back here. You need like a 3-inch extension to get back here because you don't have a lot of clearance. You could also use a swivel. Got one more hose back here. Okay, now I just want to say this. I'm going to disconnect this on mine. You don't have to do this. It's up to you. You could just pull it out of the way, strap it up or whatever. I want it out of the way. It's only one more step to remove the fuel line. So I'm going to get my little pick tool and push that blue safety lock back. Okay, unfortunately I dropped it. Now if you're going to do this, be sure to have you some safety glasses and put you a rag or something on this, because it's going to have some pressure. So it's just like that other connector. You just push in, kind of give it a push on like you're pushing it on, and then push it back. And it may take a few tries. Alright, so any pressure that was in it, the rag caught it. We've got 8 of these. I'm going to start with the 8mm in the back here. Try to keep the fuel end pointed upwards, or it's going to pour fuel out everywhere. Keep that spout pointed up. Okay, so let's just take a look in here. If you look back in there, you can see where the oil is leaking, and you can see how it's just running over the back of the transmission and running down each side. I think that's got a safety lock. I was hoping it didn't. We'll have to get that one when we pull it up here so I can better show you, because it's underneath. Okay, before we proceed on, we're going to drain some coolant. Now we got a coolant hose coming in the back. There's also a couple of places, I think, on the block here that are going to have coolant. Basically, it's going to pour out until the level gets down so far, so we're going to have a big mess if we don't drain the coolant down. So we're going to go ahead and do that, and then we'll get on these e-torques. Okay, you look down here on the driver's side, you should have a drain valve right there. So in case you're wondering, I'm not really tall. I'm standing on this. Poured up a gallon of coolant through a paint filter. You're going to need yourself some e-torques. Look like this. We're going to be using the E8. Now I could get the clamp on that hose, but the idea is that if I take the hose loose, I'm worried coolant's going to be residual coolant, going to be leaking. More leaks in here, the more I got to clean up, so I'm leaving that attached. Also, we're just going to get these E8s. Okay, and I'm not sure how much coolant's still going to be seeping up out of here. I know there's going to be oil coming out of here, so I've got rags. I'm going to lift it up and stuff these under there. Now it's going to be stuck because the O-ring goes down into the block. It's not too bad. Okay, I was incorrect. That does not have a safety lock. It was just stuck. So all you have to do is push down right there. This hose has a clip. Okay, finally got that clip loose. I don't know if anyone's noticed it. The factory, they love to clip everything. Okay, now I can move this thing whichever way I want to. Right, there we have it. So we're just going to soak this up. Really didn't get any coolant down in here, but you know, got an extractor or whatever. It's just the way that it's designed, it makes a good mess. Just use whatever you have to clean it up. I don't have to tell you how to clean something. Now these O-rings here for the coolant actually stuck. So the only other thing left is that looks like we got a couple of knock sensors. Got one there. So here and here we got a knock sensor. You could take those out of the way and unclip it there if you need to clean it. These you just push down This pops right off. All right, I'll just take a look at this. So we should have an O-ring here, here, and here. And then there is an O-ring on this spout. So what we got to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 of these seals total. So we got O-ring around this spout. See, none of them look good. 2, 3, 4, and 5. And can cause big problems. Now another thing I want to talk about is these sensors here. Now if you're not going to get you some new OEM sensors, remove these and put these on the replacement if it is an aftermarket. So if you're using an aftermarket, which is kind of hard to find, these OEM, or at least when I was looking, and they may be pretty expensive. So if you're not using an OEM, I would highly recommend getting your sensors, the coolant sensor and the oil sensor. You will gamble and lose. Okay, for the oil sensor is 1 inch and 1/16 that I'm using. So the last thing you want to do is take all this back apart, because you got a check engine light for an oil sensor. And for this one, you can either use a 19 or a 3/4 will work. It's 3/4, yeah. So we'll go ahead. We're just going to get these out. Oh, this is tight. Had to get my extended handle ratchet. Man, that was tight. Alright, so we've got our sensors, and we can just transfer them over. Okay, this cleanup was a little bit harder than I thought it would be, so I just wanted to show you what I did. Didn't realize how much oil was actually in there, but I've just been using this big syringe, nothing fancy. It got it out of there pretty quick, and putting it in this oil container. And what you're seeing here is some of these little red caps that you plug stuff off with. I didn't have one to fit this one, so I had a rubber plug, and just to keep stuff out of there while I'm cleaning. You can buy a whole assortment of these little caps. They come in real handy. Okay, here's our replacement oil cooler. It's an aluminum one. So here are set inside that one. Now notice that this one from the heat is like really distorted right here on this plastic. Let me zoom in here. So you know, these new ones are definitely sticking out, where these are all flattened out. Now the only thing that concerns me about this aftermarket is these seals, and I wanted to use these, but I can't, because these will fit the old plastic OEM, but they do not fit on this one. So I hope these are going to be really good seals. Just getting this coolant sensor. Just got some standard Teflon tape. This stuff's good for like 400 to 500 degrees. We'll just snug that up. Now, I'm not 100% sure about the coolant sensor, but I know that the oil sensor, I have heard being problems with the aftermarket. Not taking any chance. Alright, so we'll snug this up. We just need a little bit of this to go on this O-ring right here. This is the one that just goes down into the block there. Right, now I've already test fitted this. I know this is appears to be pretty close to OEM. I'll leave a link to this, but I did, like I said, put the OEM sensors on there. Okay, so we got that cleaned up nicely. It is kind of a snug fit. You got to kind of find the spot that it will go into place and slide it around. And we're going to make sure we get our little okay. Now with most of these bolts, they'll probably already be on the part because they have these little locks. Got our E8. Okay, these call for 106 inch-pounds. I'm just going to kind of start in the middle here. If you're not torquing those with a inch-pound torque wrench, I would just say to get them torqued down with a little 1/4 inch ratchet. Just snug them down good. I'm just going to be using a little screw style clamp, just getting our coolant hose back on here. Now I'm sure this clamp will be easier to get on here before you get the pump down. I wanted to say something about this screw style clamp. They are easier to use, but if you try to use the spring clamp with the aftermarket part, it may not seal the hose real nice and tight. So you may want to check that out. That's why I'm using this. Here we have our intake gaskets, the upper and lower. Okay, so we're going to be torquing this in inch-pounds. I think it called for about 96. However, I'm going to be going 80. I get real nervous with plastic. And what we're going to do is we're just going to go in the middle and just kind of crisscross. So if you go in the middle and just kind of zigzag, you'll be fine. And we're going to go around and we're going to do them all once. And we're going to come back and we're going to do them again. So if you're not using an inch-pound torque wrench, just use a 1/4 inch ratchet and just snug it down real good and quit. You know, don't overdo it. One thing that makes it a little easier to set this is take a 13mm and loosen this little bracket right here. So I'm just taking a 13mm ratchet wrench. Just come down here, it takes just a second to loosen that up, and it just makes it a little easier so you're not having to fight with that stud and your little, got your little alignment, plastic alignment peg in the back you got to get in place. So when you're setting your screws on, look at the back. There's a little round plastic peg and make sure that's in place, and then it'll set right down. We're just running them all down loosely. We'll tighten them all at the same time. And we'll start about in the middle-ish area. Now this calls for 62 inch-pounds. However, I'm just going to be snugging these down by feel. This is going into plastic. You do not want to overdo it. So I'm just running it down, just giving it a little bit. So I'm just running it down, and notice where my hand's at. It's like right here. And I'm just running it down a little bit. It doesn't have to be, it's going into plastic. I think a torque spec for this is kind of silly, but I guess it's just to keep you from over tightening it. I'm having to use this, but I'm just snug it a little bit, just going by feel. Always a good idea to make sure that we've got a new filter in there, and we do. Okay, so I'm just reaching back up in here and sliding this hose back on. And then while we're at it, so there's one right up here behind, and then there's this one right here. Can't hardly see the other one, but you can feel it. So it's hard to show you that one, but if you just reach right over here, you can feel where it goes, right there where my fingers are. I got back pretty much what I took out, just a little bit there, and I really didn't spill any except for what I spilt a little bit right here. Of course, we'll top off the oil and the coolant as needed. Alright, let's get our battery hooked back up. It'll take a minute to get our fuel prime back up. Alright, let's go check for leaks. Alright, so the best we can see, everything looks pretty good so far, but we're definitely going to keep an eye on it for several days. You know, we'll be looking for drips underneath. So I had a lot underneath here from before that I could see, and it'd be running down immediately because there was so much up there. Alright, so other than topping off the coolant, we'll check the oil, make sure to top that off, and of course we'll drive this and check it over the course of the next week or so, make sure that no new leaks pop up. So anyways, that's going to do it for the video. I hope that you found it helpful, and thank you for watching.